Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Shri Radha. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Cham Vishnupad Param Sivrajkachara Shlotar Shata Svangre Sabhacharan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantarachima Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I have to change the text. Mandikushma. It's 21, isn't it? Can you change it on the board, please? So, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, text, Chapter 10, text 21. What is Yep. Nasike nirabhidyatam, Nasike nirabhidyatam, Nasike nirabhidyatam, Nasike nirabhidyatam, Todu yati nabhasvati, Todu yati nabhasvati, Todu yati nabhasvati, Todu yati nabhasvati, Tatra vayur gandhavaho, Tatra vayu gandhavaho, Tatra vayu gandavaho, tatra vayur gandavaho, grano nasi chigrikshataha, grano nasi chigrikshataha, grano nasi chigrikshataha, grano nasi chigrikshataha, nasike nirabijatam, nasike nirabijatam, tuduyati nabasvati, tuyati nabasvati, tatra vayur gandavaho, tatra vayur gandavaho, grano nasi chigrikshataha. Oh, sorry. No, again. Okay, sorry. Text 21. Yadatmani niralokam. Yadatmani niralokam. Atmanam jatitrikshataha. Atmanam jatitrikshataha. Nirbinna yakshini tasya. Nirbinna yakshini tasya. Jyotish-chakshur gunakraha. Jyotish-chakshur gunakraha. Yadatmani niralokam. Atmanam jatitrikshataha. Nirbinna yakshini tasya. Jyotish-chakshur gunakraha. Yadatmani niralokam. Atmanam jatmadrikshataha. Nirbinne yakshini tasya. Nirbinne yakshini tasya. Jyotish-chakshur gunakraha. Yada, while Atmani, unto himself, niralokam, without any light, Atmanam, his own transcendental body, cha, also other bodily forms, titrikshataha, desire to look upon, nirbinne, due to being sprouted, he, for, akshini, of the eyes, tasya, of him, jyotihi, the sun, chakshuhu, the eyes, gunagraha, the power of seeing. Translation: Purport by Divine Grace of Acharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision and the object of sight all became manifested. Purport: The universe is by nature dense darkness, and therefore the total creation is called tamas, or darkness. The night is the real feature of the universe, for then one cannot see anything, including oneself. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, first desired to see himself and all the creation as well, and thus the sun became manifested. The power of vision for all living entities became possible, and the objects of vision were also manifested. This means that the whole phenomenal world became visible after the creation of the sun. Om Akyanati Mirandasya Krananjana Shalakaya Chakshurul Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putare Swaryam Rupa Kadamayam Dadate Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yota Parikamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamshcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Kopesha Kopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanasute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhashta Kripa Sindhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhya Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are reading the last chapter of second canto, chapter 10, called Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And which starts with the first verse of the famous verse we know, describing the 10 topics. Atra sargo visargascha. 10 topics of a Mahapurana, of the supreme one is Srimad Bhagavatam, Amala Purana, as we know. And so, and most, like after briefly touching on all the 10 topics, now we did past several verses, like the major portion of this chapter is now on the creation itself, on the primary creation by Lord Vishnu himself. And so we heard in the last several verses about how actually not so much exactly the technical details of how creation takes place, which is in more detail described like in third canto by Lord Kapila Dev and in some other parts as well, but like how exactly from the Pradhan Mahatattva and how that then gets activated by the Lord and infused with time and all the living entities, and how then it manifests, differentiates, like with the three modes into then all the 26 elements, the primary elements of the whole creation, gross and subtle. But so it's not we don't hear here about technically like how all those steps, how the universe is created, and but rather we hear it from a perspective of the conception of the Lord's universal form, which we know is, as such as we hear it here, actually not an actual form. Rather, it's as we discussed it before. It's a conceptualization which helps, especially those who want to start to become transcendentalists, but who are still on the material platform, to meditate on something which they can perceive and which still gives them the benefit of somehow meditating on the Lord, and and in that way, by thinking of the universe in this way of correlating it all to the different parts of the Lord, that to understand this major point that actually there's nothing, ultimately nothing is impersonal. All that is impersonal depends on the Supreme Person, on the Supreme Lord. And so to learn not to see anything separate from the Lord, including the whole material universe, we are advised to meditate on this universal form. And as we heard before, and also in kind of, you can say, historical context, that how Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami, it was spoken to so many sages, not only the greatest sages who were pure devotees, but also those who were more in the beginning stages and who were impersonalists, and who to whom he thus showed how everything depends on the Lord, and how one practice is, if you're not ready for bhakti yet, then you can start to link with the Lord through meditating on His universal form. And so, as we know, famous example, like the trees, for example. If you see the trees, then you think, oh, that's the the hairs of the Virat Rupa, or when you see the ocean, then that's then I think the navel, right, or the abdomen of the Lord, and all those different parts, and here we see it in terms of how you can conceive of the creation as well. That where the main point is, as we hear here many times in those verses, that even the material universe, nothing would exist without the will of the Lord. So we hear in like all those different senses, for example, the material senses, that also they exist simply because the Lord decided to perceive in such a way, and so that to always be clear that ultimately everything happens by the will of the Lord. There's nothing independent of the Lord, which is, as we heard previously in those verses also, that all the other 9 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, they are simply here to make us understand and surrender to the 10th topic, which is the Supreme Lord Himself as the Summum Bonum, as the Acharya of all the other topics. And so in today's verse we heard how, in terms of seeing, so I'll read the translation again. It says, "Thus when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see Himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision and the object of sight all became manifested." So, and Prabhupada points out in the purport from the beginning that we know the one major difference between spiritual world and material world is that material world, if you want to describe it in brief, you can say it's simply darkness, whereas spiritual world is all light. And that is, of course, first of all, it's in terms of the consciousness of the living entities. We are all in avidya, if you are in material life, in forgetfulness of Krishna, because we wanted to enjoy separately, and so He enables us this through His external energy, through Maya, and thus, we are in darkness. We don't have knowledge. We are in ignorance, but also literally, it's only in the material world that actually there's. It depends on the light of the sun that you can even materially perceive anything with your eyes. Otherwise, if there's no light, then you can't even see yourself, as Prabhupada says here. And so whereas we know spiritual world is always completely illuminated simply by the Lord's personal bodily effulgence, by the Brahmajyoti. And like Prabhupada says here, that the night is the real feature of the universe, for then one cannot see anything, including oneself. Because in illusion we see so much attractive things in the material world, but we know all this beauty, attraction is simply a perverted reflection of the real beauty in the spiritual world. And so thinking that I can be happy without the Lord by all those nice material things, that is the dense darkness of ignorance. As Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in CC that in lust is so karma lust is the dense darkness, whereas obviously the opposite is pure love of Godhead, which is full light, because only then you can that's the real feature of the spirit soul, as Satchidananda, that this chit, this knowledge, doesn't mean that the tiny spirit soul knows like all the facts of the world. Because how could it be? We're only tiny parts and parcels of the Lord. Only the Lord is omniscient; He knows everything. But the tiny jiva, what is his full knowledge? It is specifically how knowledge of how his relationship is with the Lord, and how at every moment how he can give the most pleasure to the Lord. So, and that is only fully manifest if you're situated in pure love of Godhead, obviously, because then it is completely natural, spontaneous for you that you know at every moment how to serve the Lord and thus please the Lord the most. Whereas if you're contaminated by lust, then all you think of is how you can engage in your sense gratification and thus apparently get so-called happiness, separate from the Lord, which is darkness, because that's not what who we are, and that can obviously never satisfy the soul. So, and Prabhupada further said that the Lord out of his causeless mercy first desired to see himself and all the creation as well, and thus the Son became manifested. The power of vision for all living entities became possible, and the objects of vision were also manifested. So, it's another nice point here that is made, that the Lord desired to see himself and all the creation as well. And Prabhupada many times makes this point that is one beauty of Krishna consciousness, that we don't need to endeavor very hard to try to realize ourselves as spirit soul, rather than misidentifying with the material body and mind, intelligence, false ego. We don't need to separately endeavor for that. Of course, we need to hear the philosophy from Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita and all of that. We should need to be aware of that, because otherwise we won't have the impetus to properly engage in devotional service, and we won't, especially if there's any obstacles then to the body, then we would lose our determination. But if we are fixed in this transcendental knowledge also of Atma-Jnana, that we are not this body, that if we have some issues with the body, or if the mind gets distracted, that we can quickly focus back, I'm not this, I'm spirit, soul, part and parcel of the Lord, and my only duty is to serve the Lord. So it is important, but it is not that you have to meditate on yourself as the spirit, soul, or any separate sadhana to realize yourself. Rather, we simply focus on the Supreme Soul, on Krishna. And by doing that, because Krishna is like the sun, and Prabhupada gives the example that if you are in a dark room, and you can't see yourself, the best way is simply if you go out and into the sunlight. Then you see the sun, you see everything else, and you see yourself as well. And so that's also what happens in Krishna consciousness, that we naturally will see ourselves. Our Swarupa, our eternal identity, will be revealed over time more and more. And most importantly, anyway, we know what's the Swarupa of all living entities. It's Jivara Swarupa Krishna Nityadas, right? We are all internal servants of Krishna. And why? And Mahaprabhu in this famous verse also explains in the second line of this verse, Krishnara Tatastha Shakti Beda Beda Prakash. We are all eternal servants because we are Krishna's marginal energy. We are his energy. And marginal energy means this energy which is not not like the material energy, which is simply there, which he provides for the jivas to live out the illusion, which itself doesn't have consciousness, but rather we are conscious living entities, and this marginal potency, we have this free will to use to either be situated in our constitutional position as eternal servants, or not, or being in illusion. And so now let's talk about. So that our Swarupa, it will be revealed then what exactly that comes with when we come to very elevated stages only, then our spiritual master will reveal that. But we don't need to worry about that. We know we are servant of the servant. We simply, anyway, our only means to even approach Krishna and Parampara is through Srila Prabhupada and through our spiritual masters and other senior devotees by following them, following in the footsteps and serving them. Otherwise, we have no qualification. Otherwise Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that coming to devotional service is actually on when you reach the Brahma Bhuta stage. But who is in Brahma Bhuta of us? Who is free of any limitation, hankering, completely equipoised and having realized the impersonal feature of the Lord as knowing that, fully realized that there's no pleasure at all in any material endeavors. So that would be very difficult, but by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters, we can engage in devotional service, and then by doing that, gradually we will get purified, and we will eventually one day know our specific Svarupa as well. And and we heard that just a little bit earlier about this constitutional position, how you get situated in that, and that was in connection with when the world goes into dissolution. So that was the 6th verse, I think, where it's described that when at the end, then when Mahavishnu lies down and everything, and he breathes in, then that's Nirodha. Then everything is in dissolution, and Prabhupada in the word to word he translated it in this first verse about those 10 topics that Nirodha means going back to Godhead, and because ultimately the whole purpose of material creation and then dissolution is for that. So, but how can we really go back to Godhead? Only that is in the second part of this verse. So the first one is Nirodhasyano Shayanam Atmanha Sashaktibihi. So when the Lord Shayanam, when he lies down and takes in again this Sahashaktibihi with all his energies, including us, the marginal energy, the living entities, then how can we then achieve this Svarupa, the real mukti, real liberation? That's mukti arhitan vata rupam svarupana vyayastitihi. So in our Svarupa we can be situated only if we give up all the gross and material, gross and subtle changeable bodies, as Prabhupada translates the Anyata Rupa, so any other Rupa other than the Svarupa, other than our own form, which is as eternal servants, that we need to fully give up. Then we can achieve Mukti, then we are in Svarupa. And any other Rupa, that is, as Prabhupada translates nicely, as the gross and subtle changeable bodies. So, because obviously as spirit soul we are not changeable. Spirit is eternal, but so if there's anything changeable, it means it's material, it means it's illusion. It's illusion in the sense that it's not our real position, and that identifying with that is illusion, that is Maya. And it also correlates with that I previously quoted that from Lord Kapiladev in 3rd Canto, where it basically says the same, where in the 27th chapter, where he describes how to understand material nature, and then in that verse, how to get out of it. Because giving up the gross and subtle bodies means to giving up false ego, this glue which binds us to this material bodies, to the material life, of and by identifying with the body, we think that we can be happy by interacting with matter. Because if you think that you are matter, then you think matter can give you happiness. But if you have realized that you are the soul, then you know how could you become happy if you are if you engage with matter. So there Lord Kapiladev says, Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta Trishta Dosha Chanityashaha Nishvarasya Shabam Date Svemhaimne Sthitasya. So Bhukta Bhoga Parityakta, that you give up this trying to enjoy Bhoga, trying to enjoy matter separate from the Lord. How are you able to give that up? If drishta dosha chanityashaha, that you drishta, you can see, you have realized that this material enjoyment is dosha, it is full of faults, it has no real substance. We know Prahlad Maharaj says, sukham hi tucham. It is some kind of happiness, but it is so insignificant. It cannot be compared at all to spiritual happiness, and it is temporary and always followed by miseries, as we know. So, if you have seen that, realized that, then Nishvara Shiyajubam Date, then you're real Ishvara, you're real independent, and thus the material nature cannot touch you. Ashubam Date, no inebrities can affect you. And Svemahimni Sthitasya is similar like Svarupana Vivastitihi, because it comes to the same point that is, if you're situated in your constitutional position as eternal servant, then in that verse Lord Kapila says Svemahimni Sthitasya. Svemahimni, that's your real own glory that you can be situated in if you are able to give up this material desires. And as Prabhupada many times says, to really give up material desires means that you have to replace them with spiritual desires to serve Krishna. Otherwise it's not possible. And even if someone would endeavor very hard and go on the impersonal path and reduce material desires or even attain impersonal liberation, still it's not fully giving up desires, still then you desire something separate from the Lord, something other than serving the Lord, and that's why we know that even from Brahmacharya then you will fall back eventually and again engage in material activities like in philanthropic work, for example. And also like anyway it is so difficult, like I heard recently from a lecture of my Guru Maharaj that like also Krishna actually explains that himself in Bhagavad Gita in the 12th chapter, that this impersonal path, it is very difficult also, what to speak of, that even the perfection is not real perfection and only temporary. That first of all, it is very difficult. And why? Very much explained. Because in Bhakti Yoga, the thing which enables us, even though we are not qualified, is that, especially by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, that immediately we get a higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. And only then are you able to give up all those lower tastes to which we were so attached to. And because no one of us was self-controlled or anything like that before we joined. So it is simply because out of the causeless mercy of the Lord to give us higher taste, to give us attraction to something higher, namely to something spiritual, to Him and to His devotional service and His devotees. Because as we know, Krishna means all attractive. He is the only all attractive person, only all attractive object in all existence. Whereas on the impersonal path, there's nothing attractive to be attached to. It's simply the only attraction, so-called, is that if you follow it properly, the rules and regulations and all of that, then you will become free from material miseries, and that's then so-called happiness. That to be free from miseries. It's like even in other normal material life, even for karmis, like the actual so-called happiness is simply temporarily to have less misery, and from that you think yourself happily situated. And so, yeah, and they, so to say, they do the perfection of that, to simply become free from miseries, but not being able to attach to something higher, because they might say, yeah, the Brahman is so attractive, but actually there's nothing there. It's simply the Lord's effulgence, and there's no variety, no relationships, so there's no rasa. It's simply free of miseries, and even that alone, it is bliss, but cannot be compared to bhakti yoga, which is unlimited bliss. I mean, actually, even Brahmananda is also unlimited already. So we discussed this earlier. Prabhupada says it in one purport, but still completely insignificant compared to bhakti. So that is the first thing. It's very difficult because, you try to give up the lower nature, but you don't have something higher to attach to. The only impetus is to become free from the miseries. And also Krishna tells that, like, it is very difficult for the embodied soul, because you're still in the body, material body, and you don't have a concept of that there are spiritual bodies, that there is spiritual forms which can replace your misidentifying and wanting to interact with material bodies. And so it's natural for the embodied soul then to again fall to the lower false attraction which Maya offers, because after all that's how we end up to staying so long in the material world, because Maya does, even though it's full of miseries, material life, still Maya always offers so many false attractions. And even as devotees, still, like when you go out, sometimes it can momentarily get bewildered by what Maya is showing, like so much is there. And so if you can imagine, like we are able to see the unlimited beauty of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath directly with our, even though still contaminated eyes, we're able to taste to some extent the holy name, his Krishna's prasad, and reading the books, and then by engaging in devotional service, feeling blissful, and all of that. And still, it's sometimes Maya is still powerful, that we need to use intelligence and protection of association of devotees and all of that, that we still wouldn't fall to this lower attraction. So you can imagine how hard it is for impersonalists. And then further, Krishna explains there also that the problem is that then even if they are fortunate one day to meet devotees and are reasonable that, okay, yes, makes sense what you are saying, and then they want to take up bhakti, then still they find it very hard because they are attached to this concept of impersonalism. It's still then very hard for them to fully accept in their heart that there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead and that everything is full of personalities in the spiritual world. So that's in terms of those impersonalists. And further in that verse, discussed it before, that only then you're real Ishvara actually, because otherwise in the material world we always want to be so-called Ishvaras, we want to lord over material nature and get happiness in that way. But to be really Ishvara means to be not to be conditioned, to be independent. And we know as living entities we are always dependent on the Lord. Like we heard that what Ashraya, the summum bonum, means, that actually what to speak of the living entities, even Prabhupada explained there, even the other Vishnu Tattva forms of the Lord are ultimately still dependent on Krishna, like even Lord Balaram himself, his first expansion. So what to speak of the tiny jivas? So we are always dependent on the Lord, but that is still full freedom. If we are free from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Because in material life we are always dependent on so many conditions provided by material nature. And whereas if you're free from this misconception and engage fully in pure devotional service, then we are free to simply serve Krishna. We don't depend on anything else, because we do depend on the Lord, but of course the Lord, why would He not facilitate us allowing to serve Him? That's our natural relationship, our eternal relationship with Him. So that is real freedom, to be free to love Krishna. And in terms of today, the focus is about seeing, and Prabhupada, we know about seeing, like we discussed that, yes, we don't need to separately endeavor to see, that's how we got to that, to see ourselves as a spirit soul, realize our Swarupa, but rather because Krishna is all light, He is like the sun. By focusing on Krishna, engaging in devotional service, we naturally realize ourselves as well and everything else. And we know how to approach, how to see Krishna. It is only possible by devotional service, because that is also one of the symptom of our false ego that we as conditioned souls have, that even if we hear about God from someone, then we would immediately have our foolish mentality of thinking, well, if God exists, then okay, then He should show Himself to me, then I should be able to see Him. But why should He do that if we are not qualified? And Prabhupada many times makes this point that even in material life, it's not so cheap to see a bit higher personalities, like even on this planet, some president or some famous person whom you might have to try very hard and get permission from many other persons to be able to meet him, and still he might not even agree. So which we also see then at the ultimate end, still it's up to that person himself to allow or not. So similarly, why would Krishna want to show Himself to us? But still, of course, He is merciful. It's not like that He says, "Oh, you rascal, you're not qualified. I don't want to reveal myself to you." But rather, we know it's according to our surrender, because after all, it's still our free will to forget Him, and so He always facilitates in so many ways for us to be able to see Him again, to come back to Him through sending His devotees and being always with us as the super soul and guiding us whenever we are ready to actually come closer to Him. And but still we are so impotent and would have this mentality that why would the Lord not show Himself, and I should be able to see everything just with my imperfect senses. But as we heard, even those imperfect senses are completely dependent on the Lord. It's only by His desire here that we can see, even here in this material world, what to speak of perceiving then spirit, which is obviously only possible by His causeless mercy. So we'll end here. Any comment? Okay. Krantarachima Bhaktam Ki Jai.